Okay. My paper has 4 parts. First part is more a kind of a conceptual overview that will introduce certain key ideas. The second part goes more into the texts of Orwell. The third part positions him in a context in Britain, Europe, and internationally. And the fourth part of the paper is an introduction of my own research in relation, my own PhD research in relation to the topic. So I'm going to use Orwell in this paper to explore the reverse, perhaps, of political conscience, the effort for justice to impose right over wrong, the ethos of moral thought, and desire to take action. I'm going to focus more on the release from conscience, liberation from suffering, and a sense of a political conscience and a political conscience being an inward violence against the self or otherwise. And then, as I say, I'm going to go on to explore the resonance of those ideas in relation to, particularly to the British left in the 20th century and the social history of ideas, their social history of ideas, or its social history of ideas. And these themes relate particularly to gender, although I won't be exploring gender explicitly. Orwell, as we know, was occupied a lot with the ordinary man and with manliness. I'm going to come on to this quotation in a minute. So, the Orwell, or using Orwell to explore the reverse of political conscience, is and this idea of release and weightlessness is not the conventional Orwell, who is an admirer of the ordinary man's commitment to the real world. And here is the Road to Wigan Pier, which I abbreviate as RWP, chapter 7, and his criticism of that middle class delaying of adulthood until after university. It's the idea of a great big boy of 18 who ought to be bringing £1 a week home to his parents, going to school in a ridiculous uniform, and even being caned for not doing his lessons. Just fancy a working class boy of 18 allowing himself to be caned. He is a man, while the other is still a baby. And Charles's reference to the womb relates to this idea, obviously. I'll be talking about the whale. A lot of what I'm about to say has been preempted, but there's still room for me to say what I'm going to say. So, this idea of being inside the whale is a kind of an idea of effeminacy, an ordinary effeminacy, which is not healthily alert and active and routinized and focused on results as the ordinary man who goes to work is. But is instead is instead placid, put it that way. This idea of the whale is obviously, in its domesticity, it has a class dimension and relates to ideas about middle-class fatherhood in the 19th century in Britain, which have been explored particularly by John Tosh. And also to the idea of the gentleman in the secluded space, and in relation to the public school and Oxford and Cambridge. So it's focused on the interior rather than the exterior, perhaps the social and rather than the political, the private prior to the public, or as a basis for the public. Politics being vulgar, perhaps. So on to inside the whale of the text. As Charles has mentioned, it was written in 1939 as a review essay of Miller's Tropic of Cancer, and published in 1940 with the Dickens essay and the Boys' Weekly's essay. And as such, it approaches the idea of immersion in relation to those texts, in that position, suggesting an immersion in alternative literary reality, in fantasy. And obviously refers specifically to the biblical legend of Jonah and the whale, and Jonah, who, as Orwell mentioned, is referred to in popular culture in Britain in terms of Jonah and the whale, but was actually swallowed by a fish. But in any case, denotes the idea of being swallowed within a line. Whoops. I should have I forgot that I had two quotations for my idea of Orwell and action. This is Orwell's own autobiographical reflections, and here he says, talking of his own experience, his own biography, identifying himself with outward action and his own personal encounter with great big boys of 18. When I was not yet 20, I went to Burma with the Indian Imperial Police, attached for a short time to a British regiment, and admired and liked the private soldiers any youth of 20 would admire and like, hefty, cheery youths 5 years older than himself, with medals of the Great War on their chests. So there's a tie-in between the military endeavour and the working endeavour, suggestion that sort of the weakness of pacifism and refusing to fight is related to spending too long in education. So back to the whale. Here's the connection where Orwell finds the almost the excuse to talk about the whale through Miller's text. So in passing refers to an essay that Huxley wrote about a picture. The people in Rebecca's pictures always look as though they were in the bellies of the whales, and professors find something peculiarly horrible in the idea of being in visceral prison. Miller talks that, on the contrary, there are many worse things than being swallowed by whales. The passage makes it clear. It's a type of I copied and pasted, so that's explained. But he himself finds the idea rather attractive.